Hello, today we're here to talk about how your board can submit its best application for the Public Library Grant for Skill Development in rural Alberta. For the second year in a row, Municipal Affairs is offering this grant in partnership with agriculture and irrigation to build capacity in rural Alberta by strengthening library services and programs to support communities in becoming resilient and sustainable. Today we're going to talk about the program and best practices as your board submits its application. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that Alberta Public Libraries are located within the traditional territories of the people of Treaty 6, 7, and 8, as well as the homeland of the Métis. We are grateful to the original caretakers of the land and seek to create a new relationship that is respectful and truthful. Here's what we're going to talk about today. We'll begin with an introduction to the grant program and some information about the program itself. We'll then examine how to apply for a grant, look at the application form, and go over some best practices for your board's application. Finally, we'll talk about how applications are reviewed and the grant recipient selected, and what can you expect if your application is awarded a grant. Let's begin by talking a bit about the grant program itself. The Public Library Grant for Skill Development in Rural Alberta is part of the Economic Development in Rural Alberta Plan. The plan guides rural economic growth, reflecting on innovation, diversification, and sustainable long-term economic development. The purpose of this grant program is to support library boards in rural areas to build capacity so they can help rural Albertans build skills to succeed and thrive in a quickly changing world. The program specifically supports initiatives in rural public libraries. This is a competitive grant program and not every application will be funded. This is also a separate grant from the Library Operations Grant that boards apply for each year. There are several types of library boards that can apply for this grant. Municipal and intermunicipal library boards formed under the Libraries Act may apply for this grant. Library boards that serve First Nations or Métis settlements may also apply. Library system boards are not eligible to apply for this grant. All applicants must be in compliance with current legislation and generally accepted library policy and operational standards. All applying library boards must also serve a rural jurisdiction, which has a specific definition for the context of this grant. So what is a rural jurisdiction? In the context of this grant, a rural jurisdiction is defined as the municipality or municipalities that form the board have a population of less than 20,000 people, limited geographic proximity to population centers over 25,000 that could provide sources of employment and services. They may be remote or have in them or around them a significant amount of nature, natural resources, agricultural land, and wilderness areas. This definition helps clarify the sorts of rural communities whose library boards can apply for this grant. However, there are many communities in many different contexts in Alberta that may think of themselves as rural, and your board may not be sure if your community qualifies under this definition. If you're not sure if the community you serve meets this criteria, please contact us after this presentation and before applying. We'll confirm if you are eligible or not. You'll notice that when we talk about who can apply for this grant, we've discussed various types of boards who can apply for this grant. It's important to remember that the library board as a corporate body is the applicant for this grant. Under the Libraries Act, both municipal and intermunicipal library boards are automatically corporations when they're formed. Municipal boards under Section 7 and intermunicipal boards under Section 12.2. This means that the board has the responsibility to hire staff, organize its own procedure and business, and sign contracts and agreements as a corporate body, including the grant agreement that must be signed by recipients of this grant. We'll talk more about the grant agreement towards the end of the presentation. No individual person is applying for this grant. The board as a corporate body applies. As with most corporate functions, board members and the library manager and/or designated staff do the work to prepare the application, but legally they do not apply for the grant individually. This means that the board as a whole must take responsibility for the grant. Even if the grant application is prepared by the library manager or staff, the application should be reviewed by the board as a whole at a board meeting and approved by board motion. A signing officer of the board should also sign the grant application to indicate that it is endorsed by the board as a whole. Signing officers are people authorized to sign official documents on behalf of the board and are required by Section 7(1)(c) of the library's regulation. Initiatives that are eligible for the grant should fall into one of these three broad subject areas. Digital literacy. These are initiatives that help people access, find, evaluate, and communicate information online. Examples include initiatives on basic computer skills, cybersecurity and fraud detection, and evaluating online information. Employment and job skills development. This could include resume writing and job interview skills or initiatives that allow for career exploration. Support for new Canadians. This is a new initiative this year and could include English language learning initiatives, citizenship supports, employment supports for new Canadians, or initiatives that promote welcoming communities. These are not the only initiatives that could fall into these subject areas. Feel free to brainstorm new ideas under these subject areas or combine them. Whatever the initiative is, it should support the specific needs of the community your library board serves. No matter what your initiative is, there is one grant condition your board should keep in mind as it prepares its application. No more than 25% of awarded grant funds may be spent on capital expenditures. This includes furniture, bookshelves, but most notably computers or other related technology purchases. This program is intended to build capacity in rural Alberta residents through initiatives. Capital purchases may help support that goal, but this program is not designed primarily to support capital purchases. Also, as your board develops its initiative, it should also consider its capacity to deliver the program. That is, how much time and how many resources does your board have to deliver this program, along with other duties? How much staff time does your board have to develop and deliver this program? If you must contract outside help to develop or deliver this program, how much will you have to pay them? What about any travel time or expenses? What resources do you have on hand to deliver this program? Is there anything else you must purchase? It is possible to both overestimate and underestimate the resources you may need for this program. If your board feels that it does not have the time or resources to deliver this program, consider applying for a smaller grant. One last thing for the board to consider as it prepares its application is that there are some initiatives that are not eligible for funding, such as ongoing library operational expenses. Examples: salaries, programming, and collection development for ongoing library operations or utility costs, SuperNet or internet connectivity, projects or initiatives that are substantially complete, projects or initiatives that were previously funded by this grant. If your board was previously awarded this grant, you can apply for a new project and potentially be funded for that project. But the project that was previously funded cannot be funded again. Finally, perhaps the question most boards will most want to know: how much can we apply for? Grants are available in increments of $5,000, $10,000, and $25,000. The total number of recipients of each grant amount will depend on the number of applicants, amounts applied for, and the number of grants awarded. Boards can apply for any of these amounts. However, again, be aware of your capacity as a board and be sure that your grant is informed by your capacity. Do you have the staff time and ability to get the resources to complete this program? Your board can also apply for more than one initiative. However, each initiative must be applied for under a separate form. Next, we'll examine how to apply for the grant and review some best practices for the application. Let's begin with a brief overview of the application process. Applications must be submitted electronically via the electronic form available on PLSB's website, www.albertalibraries.ca. All applications are due by February 2nd, 2024 to libraries@gov.ab.ca. You will receive a confirmation email after you have submitted your application. There are two parts to the application form: information about your applications and questions to answer about your application. Let's look at the application information first. This is an image of the first part of the application form. We've highlighted different sections on the form for this presentation. The information we've highlighted with black boxes is basic information. The information we've highlighted with a red box is a series of statements that the board must agree to before submitting the form. We'll look at each of these sections in turn. The information highlighted in the black boxes is mostly straightforward information. Give your initiative a descriptive name. What amount are you applying for? Remember to consider capacity and only choose one amount. Each initiative you're applying for needs a separate application. Enter your board name, enter a contact person for questions about the grant, and to serve as a chief contact person if the grant is awarded. This could be a member of the board, but it doesn't have to be. It's often the library manager or a senior staff person. We'll need a name, job title, and contact information for that person. When you've entered all this in, an officer of the board will need to sign and date the application. The person signing the application doesn't have to be the contact person for the grant, but it does have to be a signing officer of the board. The board is the applicant, so a person with signing authority for the board needs to sign the application. The board must also be aware of and agree to a number of statements before signing the application. The library board has reviewed the grant guidelines and understands the purpose of this grant. Have the contact person review and summarize the grant guidelines at a board meeting. The library board is aware that no more than 25% of the awarded funds may be expended on capital purchases, again, computers or mobile devices. The library board understands that if selected, a signing officer of the board will need to sign a grant agreement with the Government of Alberta. Again, the board is the applicant. The grant contact person is not the only person who needs to be aware of and agree to these statements. It's the whole board. It's best that these items are discussed at a board meeting so the board as a whole is aware of its obligations under the application. The next part of the form consists of 7 questions about the initiative the board is applying for. The questions are listed on the application, but the board will use a separate Word document to answer these questions. We'll look at each question and discuss best practices to consider as you answer each one. We don't have an image for this part of the form. It's easier to just explain the questions. The first question the board will have to answer is, describe the library initiative under consideration for the grant. This is the board's chance to summarize what it wants to do in the initiative and why the board thinks the initiative will be of benefit to the community it serves. This should be a brief summary, ideally in a few paragraphs. However, this is also the board's first chance to sell the people reviewing applications on the initiative. Why is your initiative worthy of a grant? How does it fit into the grant guidelines? Who will benefit in the community? This is a chance to start your application in a way that will give it the best chance to receive a grant. The next question to answer is, what are the goals, objectives, and our desired outcomes of the initiative? Goals, objectives, and outcomes are strategic planning tools that allow the board to plan for and measure the success of its initiative. Let's take a look at each of these items. Goal. Goals describe the benefit the community will receive from your initiative. They should be one sentence long and describe the target audience and what benefit they will receive. Example, new Canadians will connect to other community residents. Objective. An objective describes how you will reach your goal. An objective should be written as a sentence that contains a target, a measure, how you know your goal is being achieved, and a time frame for meeting the objective. Example, 30 new Canadians will attend our welcome sessions in 2024. Outcome. An outcome is measured after the program. It described what has changed in the community as a result of your initiative. Example, new Canadians indicated they felt welcome in our community. Use goals, objectives, and outcomes to bring focus to your initiative and determine how to measure its success. Question 3 asks, how will the results of the initiative be measured? This is an important element of your application. Agriculture and Irrigation, the ministry we are partnering with to deliver this grant, is very focused on measuring the results of this grant program, so you will need to plan this carefully. Some metrics of your initiative will probably be easy to measure. If you are running a series of programs, you could count how many sessions you ran and how many people attended each session. You can also measure other outputs, example, job applications submitted or resumes completed. Other results may be more difficult to measure. In previous years, we found many initiatives sought to teach participants skills and listed improved skills as a goal of the program. If you wish to do this, you should measure the skills of the participants both before and after the instruction to help confirm improved skills. Finally, consider your goals, objectives, and outcomes as you consider results measurement. Also, how will you measure your results? Via feedback forms distributed after the event, an online survey, conversations, or some other means? And how will you collect information from participants if needed? The next question is, what is the timeline for this initiative? Please provide a detailed timeline. To help the assessors understand the scope of your initiative and to help confirm that you have a plan to spend the funds within the time frame of the grant, all applicants are asked to submit a detailed timeline for their initiative. Your timeline should include key milestones for the completion of your initiative, with months and years arranged in chronological order. Bear in mind that you will have some flexibility when implementing the initiative if you are awarded a grant and circumstances change. However, if you are awarded a grant, all funds awarded must still be expended by March 31st, 2025. Question 5 is, how does this initiative support one or more of the 3 overarching goals of the grant program? This question should demonstrate the ways in which your initiative meets one or more of the goals of the grant program. Remember, the program is looking for initiatives that provide digital literacy, employment skills, and services for new Canadians in rural Alberta. To help demonstrate this, here are some initiatives that were awarded grants last year and how they connected to the goals of the program. PNOCA, the Career Launchpad. This initiative not only provided training on resume and cover letter writing, it also allowed participants to print off resumes at the library and provided clothing that participants could borrow for job interviews. It provided participants with employment skills and used library resources to set participants up for success. And Lamont, supporting seniors as digital citizens. This program takes place in the local Seniors Lodge. Using devices provided by the library, seniors get assistance navigating the track webpage, requesting and renewing items with their account, as well as filling in online forms and support for other online activities they may need, including but not limited to increasing knowledge how to keep themselves and their information safe online. This provides digital literacy skills where seniors are located in the community and provides direct help with their digital literacy needs. Question 6 is, what community need does this initiative meet, and how was this need determined? A successful initiative meets the needs of the community. You can determine the needs of the community by assessing those needs and looking for evidence that your initiative is needed by local residents. Your library is already required to do a needs assessment as part of its plan of service process. Before you begin planning your program, look to your plan of service and the community needs assessment that you did when you created your plan of service. Does the initiative you're planning meet the needs outlined there? Other ways you can gather information to support community need include statistics gathered for your annual report or other purposes, surveys, or consultations with other community organizations, and reviews of their strategic plans or community needs assessments. The last question on the application is, what is the budget for this initiative? Please provide a detailed budget. The budget tells the reviewers how much will be spent in various categories in the project. It helps the reviewers assess whether the project and its costs are realistic. Like any budget, your budget should include how much will be spent in various categories. Your budget does not need to be too detailed. There's no need to outline how much you will be spending on every single purchase for the program. However, by reviewing the budget, the application reviewers should get a sense of the scope of the project and what it attempts to accomplish in financial terms. A good budget shows that the applicants have considered the financial costs of their initiative and helps convince the reviewers that the project can be accomplished in the given time frame. In this last section, we'll take a look at the application review process and what to expect if your initiative is awarded a grant. Once all applications have been received, the applications will be reviewed by a committee of PLSB employees. Selection criteria will include demonstration of need. Have you identified how your initiative will benefit the community? Is it based on evidence outlined in your needs assessment or plan of service, or other evidence from surveys, statistics, or consultation with other community organizations? Quality of planning. Does your budget, project, and timeline demonstrate that your initiative is realistically costed and can be completed within the grant time frame? Alignment with grant program objectives. Does your initiative support one or more of digital literacy, job and employment skills development, or services to new Canadians for residents of your municipality? What are the goals, objectives, and outcomes that connect your program to the program objectives? Suitability of proposed benchmarking. How will you measure the outputs and outcomes of your initiative? How will you measure any skill improvement of participants? Grant qualification criteria. As previously discussed in this presentation, does your board serve a rural community as defined by the grant program? And again, if you're not sure, please contact PLSB to confirm. Do you plan to spend no more than 25% of any grant funds awarded on capital expenditures such as computers or other technologies? Remember that this is a competitive process. Funding is not guaranteed. However, by thoughtfully answering the questions in the grant application form, you will give your application the best chance for success. What what happens if your initiative is awarded a grant? First, PLSB will contact you to offer their congratulations and notify you of the grant amount awarded. Your board will then have to sign a grant agreement. This agreement outlines the terms of the grant, how the money is awarded, and what the board's reporting responsibilities are with respect to the grant. The board should review the contract at a board meeting before signing it. Because the board is the applicant, the contract must be signed by a signing officer of the board. One of the most important parts of the grant agreement is the schedule, labeled Schedule A. This schedule contains a brief summary of the granted project. It is based on the project as outlined in the grant application. It is brief to allow some flexibility in the timing and implementation of the grant program, in case circumstances change between when the application is submitted and when the grant is awarded. However, by signing the grant agreement, your board is legally agreeing to fulfill and implement the grant initiative as outlined in Schedule A of the grant agreement. The board should review this schedule carefully and be sure that the terms outlined in Schedule A are still feasible for your board. If they are not, please contact us as soon as you can. The board will have to report on the grant over the course of the grant agreement. All funds must be expended by March 31st, 2025. Interim reporting will be expected over the course of the grant, usually taking the form of phone calls or emails with PLSB staff. A formal financial report is due once the funds are expended. A final project report on the initiative will be due by September 30th, 2025. You will be expected to report on the benchmarks that you set out in your grant application and on the outputs and outcomes of the grant. More information on the final project report and financial report will be forthcoming. And that is the end of the presentation today. Again, if you do have questions about your eligibility or anything else about the grant, please contact us at 780-427-4871 or by email libraries@gov.ab.ca.